Hello and welcome. I'm Laura Briggs with the Vegan Fitness Runner podcast, where I'll be talking all things running, health and fitness, and what it means to be an active vegan. My next guest is Kayleigh Webster, ultra runner and author of the Happy Diet cookbook. She's a member of the Green Runners, is plant-based, and has a penchant, porridge, and poke bowls. Hello, Kayleigh. It's lovely to have you with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
How are you doing? Have you been doing lots of long runs recently?
I have, yes. I mean, this is probably, I'm going into my third sort of peak week for the Highland Fling. So at the weekend there, I was out for about 5 hours, but it was quite a hilly run. I sort of racked up about 1,300 metres of elevation, but it was a nice gentle plod around the Ardgarten Loop, just out by Loch Long on the northwest of Scotland. So it was lovely, actually. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought the route itself actually wasn't really my usual kind of trail. It was very much a track for most of it, so I did find it a bit monotonous at times. Certainly probably would have been fun with a friend, but it was just nice to be outdoors exploring. So we've recently just got campervan, actually, so it's been great to, every weekend it's like, right, where does Kayleigh want to run? And then we go off and explore, so it's been great.
It makes it more of an adventure as well when you've got the camper. You can just hop in and go wherever you feel, I guess, can't you?
Oh, exactly. And then when you come back and you've got a nice cup of tea waiting for you, it's lovely.
Oh, sounds dreamy. Listen, Kayleigh, to a lot of people, 5 hours of running sounds maybe a little bit overwhelming. Is that kind of normal for you now?
I would say so, yes. I mean, I go at a very, very steady, easy pace for me. So I was out for 5 hours, but it was only just about, I say only, but here we go, 21 miles. But it's a nice steady pace, quite a lot of walking, certainly walk the hills. So I just go at a steady pace so I can do these often. It doesn't take me a long time to recover. You know, I run 6 days a week. So I need to make sure that my effort's super easy so I can hit the hard sessions hard and recover well. So although it sounds quite daunting, it's something I'm very much used to. And it's just like a nice, a fast pack walk, I suppose, with a lot of food on the way.
It's important to remember, isn't it, that obviously 6 days a week running, and obviously if you're going out 5 hours a go, it's to a lot of people that's quite maybe intimidating, or it sounds like an awful lot. And some people, I mean, I've had it myself, you know, they really draw breath and think, oh, that's not very good for you. But you've got to remember, haven't you, that you're used to this. This is what you do. Your body's very able to kind of compensate, and you're able to get enough energy on board. And for you, this is fine, isn't it?
Well, that's it. The body is so quick at adapting. And I was actually just reflecting on this earlier because I was having a wee bit of a dip in confidence last week. I just sort of came out of a bout of illness, and the mind does what the mind does. But I was actually just reflecting on how I remember how elated I was my very first 10K run. And here I was just out plodding along a 10K as a training run. And then even like the preparation for a half marathon and the carb loading I used to do before just running 13 miles. Whereas now, yeah, it's just a normal day. You know, you don't need that same sort of planning and prep, and you don't need to carb load because your body is very much used to it. So yeah, it's just that way of adapting over the time. And obviously 5 hours is quite an average thing for me. And the prep comes now for the sort of bigger race day events. But yeah, that's probably what it is. It's just very much used to it.
And obviously, Kayleigh, you're on a plant-based diet. So are there any particular foods that you favour before you would go out for a long run?
Typically the night before, nothing beats pasta, to be honest. It's nothing fancy. It's just typical runner's fuel. I have obviously I try lots of different things to see what works best. Rice dishes and things are quite good. But for me, I just find a simple pasta dish, whether it's just pasta and tomato sauce, or there's a lovely recipe I do, which is like a creamy mushroom pasta, which it's so simple to make, so tasty. Just a nice big plate of that tends to do the job. And then in the morning, I religiously eat a giant bowl of porridge every morning, regardless of whether it's a long run or not. So that is my staple. It feels wrong if I miss my porridge in the morning.
And I think your Instagram followers will be very au fait with your pictures of porridge, won't they? They've become famous in their own right, I think.
It has. I mean, that's sort of, I wouldn't say how the page started on Instagram, but I very much was always drawn to food profiles on Instagram. I just love the pictures of food, and it just made me get quite creative with my porridge. So I would be thinking, right, what sort of dessert can I recreate and make into a porridge, like a carrot cake porridge or a black forest gâteau, and even just getting creative with how it looked, placing the fruit around in a nice pretty pattern. And it's kind of like pointless in a way. It's just to, not necessarily to show off, but it gave me that creativity, which has obviously led me to where I am now with my recipe creations.
Absolutely. And what were you always plant-based, Kayleigh, or is this something that you came to a little bit later on?
Yeah, so I'm actually coming up to my 2-year anniversary. So it was May the 4th, 2 years ago. I just sort of made that decision. After reading, I was quite interested in the sort of longer runs. I knew that was really what I enjoyed. I wasn't very much into the sort of short distance and fast efforts. So I started my running journey a few years ago, 3 years ago, and I was sort of about just after my first marathon. I was like, well, maybe this is what I'm sort of more made for it rather than the shorter speed stuff. So I started researching it a bit more and came across Scott Jurek and his book Eat and Run. And I was just sort of hooked on it, and just his sort of transformation from this, from introducing plant-based foods into his diet and how that impacted not just his running performance, but his overall well-being. And through that book, he recommended other books that he read and went away and researched. So I did the same. And it really just opened my eyes to the sort of processed world that we live in. And it's not necessarily just about avoiding certain foods. It's more about getting the right foods into us and how that benefits us, not just in the short term, but the long term, because we very much always want this sort of immediate fixes, but we forget about the long-term repercussions. So that really sort of made me think, right, I need to give this a try. I've always been quite creative in the kitchen. I've enjoyed cooking. It's I've gone through phases of cooking just vegetarian meals for no other reason, just to enjoy it, and I see a recipe, I want to try it. So it wasn't a super daunting thing, although I did think the cheese aspect and not having that was going to be really, really hard. But I think the benefits were pretty instantaneous for me, and I've just never looked back. It was, it's one thing to think that you can't ever have cheese again. Oh, I don't think I could do that. But actually, as soon as you start seeing how good you feel and everything else, you're like, well, I don't miss it at all, actually. I think I'd miss feeling this way more, if that makes sense.
Sure. And was it your athletic performance that you saw improvements in? Was it kind of just your general health and well-being? What were the particular things that stick in your mind?
Both, I wowould say, definitely. So when it comes to the athletic performance, it was very much, I seemed to recover really quickly. So these long runs that I do, I never had soreness in my legs the next day. DOMs were a thing of the past. And I know that your body adapts as well, so that's part of it. But it definitely was noticeable in that regard. I felt more energized, not just, well, I suppose in everyday life, which then allows you to perform better. My sleeping improved. I definitely noticed that change, and just that general fatigue in the afternoon slump just disappeared as well. So they were the noticeable changes, and it just felt, it sounds cliche, but happier.
I've heard of a lot of vegans actually, and they all say it's amazing how happy they feel. I don't know if you've heard of Paul Ude. He's 86 years old. He was actually on the podcast, and he said he's just one of the happiest people he knows. Yeah. All down to being vegan. So there's definitely something in it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, do you have any particular great recipes that you will try before, either during ultra running or before a race, or maybe even one that you have when you're recovering? Is there any kind of go-to foods for you now?
Well, I am absolutely going through a phase just now of poke bowls or poke bowls. I'm not quite sure on how you pronounce it. Yeah, but they're just a big bowl of nutrition, really. You've got a nice big bed of cold rice. I actually sometimes heat it up depending on what mood I'm in, and add spinach and just mango, avocado, edamame beans, just anything that I've got to hand, tofu or tempeh, get the protein in it. And then I just whack on a bit of a tahini dressing that I make up, or even just a dollop of hummus. So it changes depending on what I've got to hand, but I find that really just nourishes me, and that's what I crave more than anything. So although I quite like my sort of high carb pasta dish beforehand, throughout the week, every lunchtime, I just craving those poke bowls. And I think that, again, it's just all that nutrition that's adding to you. So it's just a variety of the fruit and vegetables that you just whacking in, and it looks colourful. And ideally, that's what I tend to go for when I'm making anything, is the colour. The more colourful, the better, really.
Yeah, they say, don't they, the more variety of fruit and veg, the better now. It's not so, we're not focusing. I remember the day when it used to be 5 a day. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Then they bumped it up to 10 a day, and now it's plant points, I think. So it's all about trying to get, an absolute variety of colours and textures into, one bowl, essentially, is the best way forward. They sound really delicious, and I've had poke or poke bowls. I have no idea how to pronounce it, but they're really good for you, aren't they? Especially when you need all those nutrients for running and for recovery.
Yeah, and it's like, when you say texture as well, that's quite an important thing that I try and add to my my recipes as well, is even just throwing in a handful of toasted pumpkin or sunflower seeds or anything like that, just a bit of crunch. It just brings that extra element to it, but also you're getting some additional nutrients too.
You're obviously quite a creative person by nature. Just when you said about, creating these beautiful porridge bowls just to take photos of, do you think going plant-based has made you more creative with your cooking?
Definitely, I would say, because you sort of got to think outside the box. I say you've got to. I very much try and avoid the alternative products that you get. So the meat-free substitutes, because I find that they're actually probably loaded with just as much rubbish as it was if you were just to have chicken or beef. So I try and avoid that, and I try and recommend that other people avoid it. And because of that, then I have to get a bit more creative with what we can do with things that are at hand. So, I mean, one thing I get so much satisfaction out of is making a delicious creamy sauce out of a vegetable that no one would have any clue that's what the sauce is. So a butternut squash is great for that, or sweet potato, avocado, and it's just amazing. It just gives that smoothness and richness, and then you obviously can whack in your flavors to bring it to life. Even cashews, like I've made some epic carbonara dishes using cashews to give that creamy flavor. You think, how can you make nuts? But it's once you soak them and blend them up, they go so smooth and creamy. And I've even tried to make my own cheeses, which has been a great bit of fun too. Again, I try not to buy alternative cheeses in supermarkets because they tend to be loaded with all sorts of stuff. But they're actually super easy to make at home as well, with just a few ingredients. So I've been trying in and out. It's nothing's that I've made yet that I'm willing to sort of put into a cookbook, shall we say. But it's still either I get the texture right or I get the flavour right. It's never both. But
I was going to ask you, have you been successful with this cheese? Because I think it's like the holy grail, isn't it, for vegan food? And that, one person just needs to come up with this, this one recipe for vegan cheese, and everyone's going to go wild about it. But no one's found it yet, I don't think.
Not yet, but I'm sure it's not far away. But I mean, I've made a really nice sort of mature cheddar kind of style, that sort of crumbly texture and tangy flavour, which was pretty good. But again, then it wouldn't melt. So you're like, right, how do I get that? But it's just a good bit of fun, really. And I think that's why I enjoy it. And I wouldn't have said I was a creative person. I never sort of see that in myself, but obviously I am. It's the realisation of having that creativity, but through food. It doesn't necessarily have to be pen to paper and making portraits or anything like that, I suppose, or being in theatre productions. I am creative, but with
absolutely, yeah. I mean, your food, it looks lovely, and it's you creating amazing dishes, isn't it? It's all creativity. Now, you obviously cook a lot. You enjoy cooking. You're in the kitchen, obviously thinking ahead. What meals can you prep? Some people really detest cooking in all forms, but looking at the kind of things you make, Kayleigh, it all seems very manageable for, let's say the amateur chef or somebody that's maybe not quite so confident. Would you say that most of what you make is, quite approachable, is quite easy to do?
Yes, and that's very much my aim. Really, is I love looking at recipes and I love cooking, and I'm very capable of following the recipe. But even one of the things um, I detest is probably too much of a strong word, but if I get a lovely cookbook and you're flicking through and all these lovely recipes, but they're like a million ingredients and each recipe is a completely different ingredients list, and the thought, it's just so overwhelming, and you just, it's quite sad. I've got so many recipe books on my shelf that just never get opened because of that. So I very much try and be able to create a pack of recipes that use the same sort of ingredients. So you buy one jar of something that you can then use for multiple recipes, and try and keep the recipe list down to simple, affordable ingredients. And yeah, so simple things such as like miso paste is probably, you and I will know what it is, but someone that's not so familiar with a plant-based diet or that kind of cuisine, it's a new ingredient. It's quite daunting, but what I want is you buy it once and then you can use it for multiple recipes. It brings so much flavour to dishes, especially those that typically rely on sort of umami flavour, and like typically anything that has beef in it as a substitute, you just add that, and it just gives it such a delicious depth. But yeah, so I'm just going on a wee bit off on a tangent here, but ultimately I don't want your shelf to be full of jars of things that you're never going to use again, or just that one recipe needs that bottle of pomegranate molasses. I don't want it to be like that. So I very much want it to be easy and accessible for everybody. Yeah. I've sort of, don't know if I waffled my way through that.
No, that's brilliant. And you've hit a nerve, actually, because I have a bottle of pomegranate molasses in my cupboard from a recipe that was in an Ottolenghi cookbook that I thought, yes, I'll make that. And then I just have this bottle and I'm not quite sure what to do with the rest of it, but it's still there should I ever need it. I know exactly what you mean. It's nice to make things simple. And actually going back to the porridge and the poke bowls, they're really easy, aren't they? Because you just put in there whatever you want.
I know that, and that's why I think I keep getting drawn back to it. And there's, in some ways, I feel like, well, I'm missing out on that creative because I'm not making a new recipe. But ultimately, it's what I enjoy, and it's so easy. So especially when you've got a busy life and you've got all the training to fit in, etc. It's quite nice to just have something that you could just throw together in 5-10 minutes, and it's just so nourishing. And I quite enjoy food that it takes time to eat as well. And that's something that I think since going plant-based has been a big change for me. So looking back, for like lunches used to always be a sandwich or something like that. And I'd inhale a sandwich and it'd be done in like 2 minutes. And it's like, that's it, done. Whereas if I sit down to a poke bowl, I'm still munching away 10 minutes later. So that's quite a big thing since.
I suppose as well, Kayleigh, we're just saying about the amount of training that you do. It takes up a lot of time, and to then have to get home and cook something from scratch, it can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. Some people might just think, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to dial up for a takeaway, or I'm just going to grab some snacks. But again, that's why it's so great having an easy recipe, isn't it? Because A, you can prep it ahead really simply, or B, you can literally throw it together in 10 minutes. And so you're still eating well despite doing all that training.
Exactly. And that, again, it's just keeping things as simple as possible. So you're only dealing with one pan. You're not having to saute something one place and do this the next. And, it's just keeping it all nice and simple. So yes, although the recipe might take 30 minutes to cook, ultimately it's only like 5 minutes of effort, and then you can sort of just leave it to do its own thing. You can plot around, do whatever, do some of your strength exercises in the kitchen while you're waiting. It's just trying to be a bit creative that way as well, and just getting things sort of multitasking or habit stacking, or however you want to call it. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about your running now. You're obviously up in Scotland, spending a lot of time training currently for the West Highland Way running that you're doing. Is there a particularly special place that you enjoy running in?
So the West Highland Way there's something so electric about that route. So I'm quite lucky that it's not too far away to get to. And I've been quite lucky to go out and run quite a bit of that route over the past few months, and it does just bring me to life. I can't explain it. So I'm hoping on the day that will help pull me through. But other than that, I'm very close to the Pentlands, which is, you've got plenty of sort of hill climbs out there, and it's been great to go out on sort of group runs. It's just outside Edinburgh, so it's like a half an hour drive from my house, and it's been wonderful to try and get out there. It's definitely more appealing on a nice clear day for the views, but and it can be quite I suppose treacherous in the wintertime. Absolutely, the weather can get quite wild out there. Some of the ascents, but it has been great at sort of bringing people together, and you just sort of all chat away and just go out and have fun in the hills, really. So yeah, that's quite lucky to have that on my doorstep. Yeah.
It's beautiful up there. I mean, let's be fair, Scotland's not known for its weather. So I think you have to be fairly robust and willing to put up with rain, don't you, quite often in
it's
where you live.
Relentless, honestly, especially the past couple of months. It feels like you get a wee teaser of like one afternoon of sunshine and you think, yes, this is it. And then no, it's like
it's back to rain.
But in some ways, it does. I think that helps with the sort of mental side of the endurance running, is being able to just get out and get it done regardless of the weather, because you never know what's going to be like on race day. So it's quite good to just. We've all got a tendency to say, "Oh, I'll put it off. I'll wait for the rain to go off, or I'll do it later on." But if you can push through that and just get out the door, that's such a big win in itself, no matter how the run itself goes. Yeah.
Now, you already said that you're really lucky to live where you live. So you feel very privileged to have, this beautiful countryside on your doorstep. And I'm in a similar situation down in Somerset. I've got amazing open countryside to just step out and run in. There are plenty of people who maybe live in the cities and, perhaps accessing those lovely trails is a bit trickier. Do you have any kind of tips for people that might be interested in trail running, but just find it really tricky to get to those places?
I think if most places will have a park or something like that nearby, and I think you can often find little trails within that. So it doesn't have to be a big epic trail to try and still get a bit of experience out there. So even if it means just running around on your local park on the grass and running in the mud and going through the woods rather than on the path, and try and get a bit of sort of the technical side of it. So just being a bit creative with your routes. Yeah, I suppose that's sort of how I do it, because otherwise you've got to venture out further afield, and I mean, public transport out in Scotland isn't the best, but I have done that before. It was quite a good adventure, actually. So I planned a route out by Calendar. So I managed to walked to the train station and got the train to Stirling, and then I got a bus from Stirling to my start point, and then I ran all the way. I think it was about a 22-mile run to a town called Killin, and then they only have a bus that runs like every 2 hours, so it's quite fun to try and like time it all and work it, and then you bus back. So there are certainly ways to do it. It's just, and I think that's part of it, seeing it as an adventure rather than just the run, and get a bit creative that way. Find somewhere that you could do a destination run and make your way back through public transport. And other ways as well is you can, join run clubs or meet up with other runners and sort of car share. Did that a few times as well before I had my own vehicle. Actually, I was very grateful that I had another runner that would always swing by and pick us up on any of our sort of group runs that we had planned. So it certainly helps connecting with others. It's just such an inclusive community. No one will ever see you stuck. Yeah.
And that brings us quite nicely onto the whole kind of sustainability aspect of running. And I know, you're a member of the Green Runners, as am I, which is a brilliant group, isn't it, of runners who basically think more sustainably and about the footprints that we leave, and environmental responsibility. What kind of things do you think about when you're out running in terms of the environment?
So it's so simple sometimes, but I quite like the leave a place better than you found it, rather than, so you hear that leave the place as you found it, which means take all your rubbish away with you anywhere that you go. But I like saying leave it better than you found it, meaning if you see a bit of rubbish, pick it up and put it in the bin. And especially on race days when you're out on an event and you never know whether it's intentional or not. Most often it must be an accident, but see the amount of gel packets that you see out on the trails, and it's just, so you just pick it up and stick it in your pack and drop it off at the next bin. It's just little things like that, and I think that just makes a difference. And you can even it's quite fun to get creative again with your runs. If you're starting to feel a bit of a slump, just take a bag with you on a run and make a game out of it and collect the all the litter that you find. And it is quite shocking how much you do come across, but I think that's quite a thing that I've always tried to do. And with regards to, there was something else I was going to say, but I've just totally lost it. Oh, I think it was more about kit, sorry, rather than the actual during the run. So there's so much stuff out there that you can buy secondhand that's such good quality. So my instinct, rather than it buying anything new, I always go on Vinted or eBay and get secondhand, whether it be a watch or new shorts. I've even had several pairs of trainers before off Vinted, and it just helps reduce that that cycle of just constantly producing and buying and disposing. It's just not a very sustainable way of our sport, really, and it doesn't help when it's marketed in such a way that you need a new pair of shoes every couple hundred miles.
Oh, that's the worst, isn't it? Don't get me started on that. It makes me so angry. I know we waste, so much stuff ends up in landfill, doesn't it? And well, I think genuinely people are becoming more mindful about where their things come from and how actually, we can reuse, we can upcycle, we can mend, can't we?
Yeah.
I love your philosophy of making a place better than you left it, because I think the adage is, leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but photos. Yeah. But actually, let's take the rubbish. That's a great mantra. And I think definitely more people should be thinking about, how can I improve my environment, not how can I just leave it as it is.
Yeah, and it's just a simple gesture, really, and you can't not feel good about yourself as well. So it's a bit of a that sort of positive mindset and mindfulness as well that you're doing at the same time. It is an act of kindness ultimately to your environment.
And also, not just the physical act of taking litter home and the clothing that you're purchasing, but what you're eating as well also has a better impact on the environment, doesn't it? Being plant-based itself is the best thing you can do, actually.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And that's definitely something that I've been becoming more and more aware of. And even just tonight, though, I was looking through my fridge and I've got all the stuff that's just wrapped in plastic, and it frustrates me, that aspect of it. So yes, I've done the shift, and it's a huge improvement going plant-based rather than eating so much dairy and meat. But there's still a huge shift that needs to happen with the actual packaging of foods, and it is difficult because you can go plastic free, but ultimately that costs more. It's more difficult to source, and that's not accessible for everybody. And it's just such a limiting factor to try and encourage people to make that shift.
Yeah, no, you're right. And as frustrating as it is, it's everywhere, isn't it? It's not like you can avoid it. I mean, a fellow green runner, Darren Evans, recently ran the Brighton 10K to kind of prove a point. I think it was sponsored by Buxton Water. And, you've got runners grabbing bottles of water and then actively being encouraged to throw the bottles on the floor. I mean, what is going on? We're trying to stop using all this plastic, and then they're marketing it at everybody, saying, no, it's fine, have the plastic water bottle and then chuck it on the floor, and don't worry, we'll clear it up. What are we teaching our fellow runners? This is outrageous. But you're right, yeah, plastic's everywhere. And so If you're kind of talking to somebody and they're maybe wondering how to start being a little bit more conscientious in terms of their environmental footprint, what would you recommend as some really simple steps that they could take?
I suppose the eating more plant-based is obviously such a big thing, and it makes such a huge impact, and it doesn't have to be as daunting as it sounds. So, I mean, I think a lot of people now are trying to do like one day a week meat free, but it's just trying to sort of slowly do a bit more and more of that, or rather than having cow's milk, trying to switch to an alternative milk product as well. So, I mean, they're getting more and more popular, and you find them pretty much in every cafe that you venture to now offers these alternatives. So it's just, I would say, just do little to start off with. I mean, the easiest thing would be, I think, just choosing a day of the week where you decide that you're not going to have any meat or dairy. Is such a simple thing to do, but will make such a big impact. Just on the plastic thing as well, and regards to fueling, one thing I've always been quite reluctant to ever endorse is gels, and that's because of the sort of, it's twofold. One, it's just pure sugar that you're just giving into your body, and yes, it's good for the sort of short term and you get the performance, but in the long term, how healthy is that actually for you, as well as the expense of it and the single-use plastic. So what I'm trying to do is now sort of experiment with alternative real foods that can be sort of in a more pureed and gel form, because I understand the practicalities of why people choose the gels, especially the faster runners and those that are doing marathons and 10Ks. You go in that hard effort. You can't really just like whip out and peel a banana like I do. So while I very much like my real food on my runs, yes, I am doing a totally different kind of effort. But actually, even when I do put the effort in, I am still relying on those sources. But my latest run that I did, or event, I should say, the Backyard Ultra, I did find it difficult through the nighttime hours to eat whole foods. So it's actually given me a bit of a kick to try and figure out how I can still get nutrients into me and fuel and calories, but in a liquid form, just to just shove it in and get it down, because the thought of chewing was just such an effort, and ultimately led me to not go as far as I wanted. So I think that's something that I'm quite passionate about now, is getting creative in that kind of area, if that makes sense.
Well, do you know what? I will be watching that very carefully, because funnily enough, the weekend just gone, my husband took part in a race called the Wanna, which is 85 miles over 24 hours. Now, he got to mile 40, but at mile 20, he had griping kind of gastro pain. Mm-hmm. And he's been trialing gels. And he's a seasoned runner. He's run his whole life. He's never had this pain before. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, I think it's too many. You've been taking on too many gels. So we're now looking at alternative ways for him to get that high carbohydrate calories into him without having to take the gels and more real food. So I'm really interested in what your findings are here.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, watch the space. I'll
watch that space. Yeah, because I don't particularly think they're very good for you, like you said as well. We shall see. But you've got, obviously, we were talking about the Highland Fling that when we aired, possibly you'll have done. But there are plenty of other events that no doubt you're looking forward to throughout the year. Can you tell us about any other things that are in your diary at the moment?
Yeah, so my biggie is the West Highland Way race, which is in June. But after that, I'm sort of keeping my calendar free, more so because I find when you've got an event, it's you sort of hone in on that. And what I've realised through my training is I really quite like the adventure runs and the destination runs. So I quite like the idea of thinking, well, where do I want to run to today? And it might be ultra distance, it could be a 40-mile destination. And I quite like that as sort of my next stage in the journey, sort of more self-supported kind of out with an event. But the events I am still keen to keep in my diary, which I don't think, for me personally, I don't see it needing the same sort of intensive training, is the backyard ultras, which is it's a 4.167 mile loop that you run on the hour every hour. And the idea is the race goes on until the last man standing, or woman. So it can go on for days ultimately. So it's an event that I've really, really enjoyed the format. I think I can go quite far, and I'm enjoying learning. I've only done 2 so far, but I've thoroughly enjoyed that format, and I'm looking forward to seeing how far I can go. So I did the Highlander Backyard Ultra in the summer last year, which is in July, and I'm quite keen to go back and do that again. I'm just a bit reserved knowing it's only about a month after the West Highland Way. But I will still be there, because it's an event that it doesn't matter how much you do, you can still take part. You can do what they call yards, as each loop is a yard. So you can do 8 yards, you can do 12, you can do 1. You're still, everyone gets a DNF except the winner, which is quite an interesting take on it as well. But the one I have committed to signing up to is in November, Golspie Backyard Ultra. So that's up north in Scotland. So I'll have plenty of hours of darkness for that one, and lots of cold weather. So I seem to
have a particular. Do you have a particular mile that you want to hit, or a yard number that you want to hit on that, Kayleigh, or are you just going to see how you go?
I think when you set a limit, your body knows when you're reaching that limit, and therefore you will only get that far, if that makes sense. So I'm trying to work on the mindset of taking away that limit. So there's certainly goals there. I did have goals for the one that I did in March, but like I said, unfortunately, my nutrition sort of let me down there. But I'm very much keen to keep pushing past at least 24 hours. I definitely know I can do that part. I think doing the West Highland Way in June will give me a huge bit of confidence of knowing I can cover that distance. It's just making sure that I can do it within the sort of the time, because you have to complete the loop within the hour. And although that seems quite easy to do, you're only doing 4 miles in an hour, that's easy. But when you get on to do your 15th, 16th, 17th loop of that, you start to, time becomes precious.
Well, it's an interesting concept as well, isn't it, Kayleigh? Because if you're a fast runner and you decide to run your first loop quickly, of course, you have enough time at the end then to, fuel, to go to the loo, to, change your socks. But if you decide to take it nice and easy, of course, you've then got no time to do any of those things, do you, at the end? And you've got to go straight out again. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's almost like you need a bit of a strategy, don't you?
You do. And I think that's what is just so fascinating about it, because it very much is so individual. So what will work for one person will certainly not work for the other. So for example, if I got back, I could go faster, but then I'd probably cool down quickly and get cold. And then you've got that standing period of before you go again. So it works quite well for me personally to have less time hanging around. So I'll typically aim to do a loop in 52, 53 minutes. And that's 7 minutes left. It does go very, very quickly. Like say, once you go to the toilet, you change your socks, you grab some snacks, and it's before you know it, you have to be back. But that strategy works for me. Yeah.
And will you have anybody crewing for you on these events?
Yeah. So like I said, we've recently got our camper, so that's been game changing really. So my partner Michael, he was brilliant actually at that event. That was his sort of first real crew experience, and he was always there at the end of every loop, all through the night, with a cup of tea ready for me. And that was good. And it's been nice on my long runs. I've been actually taking Indy, our Labrador, with us. So the past few long runs I've done. So hopefully at Golspie, they said dogs are allowed, so she'll be there. She won't run with me, but it's just always so nice when you come back and you see.
A bit of a pick me up when you see her at the end of the loop. Absolutely. Yeah. I've done one backyard ultra, and I didn't have anybody crewing for me.
Oh my goodness!
And I'm going to tell you, I probably wouldn't do it that way again.
Yeah.
It's a bit soul destroying when you come in, there's nobody there, and then you have to go off again and try and, feed yourself when you're not really in the right frame of mind. But
Goodness,
that sounds like a fantastic challenge, and it sounds like you've already learned from past events, which is really is great, isn't it? Because you can take that forward and do better, improve. Will you have any kind of snacks on board for that backyard ultra that you'll have made yourself, or will you be relying on any particular foods for that one?
So my classic go-to snacks for any of my long runs is bananas. I have dates, medjool dates stuffed with marzipan. That's been a new one since Christmas time, and that is just a game changer. I always use the wee ginger pieces that I've got, like sugar crystallized ginger. I just bulk buy them off Amazon now because I go through them so quickly. And peanut butter and jam sandwiches. They're my sort of 4 must-haves. And then beyond that, like I say, I think I'm needing to get a bit creative for the times when I'm fed up with bananas.
And just want kind of a quick injection of
just something, yes. So whether it's sweet and savoury, I find my taste for sweet goes a lot quicker, and then I start craving savoury stuff. So I'm trying to think of how can I make a savoury pureed food. So I know there's I've forgotten what her name is, the runner, but she quite likes mashed potato and ketchup. So I'm adding that to my to try list.
Interesting. Yeah, one to try for sure.
But I've done. Oh, sorry.
No, you carry on.
Yeah, I've tried sweet potato and maple syrup. That was good. And I did also try pureeing up rice and honey. And while the taste was good, it was still a wee bit grainy, and it was just a weird sort of thing to have. And I was like, I'm going to put that to the side.
I don't know. I think everything you've mentioned so far actually is making me quite hungry. So I think that's a good sign, because when you run, maybe people won't know this if they don't run long distances, but once you've run a long way and you've had a lot of fuel, your taste buds they almost become numb, don't they? And you need to, if you've just been having sweet stuff, it's suddenly the last thing that you want to do is have anything sweet. So you need to shake it up a bit, don't you? Have a bit of contrast.
Oh, definitely. And that's also a reason why I can't understand. Kudos for the people that can go 100 miles just purely off gels. I'm like, oh my goodness, I couldn't imagine anything worse. But it's texture as well. You want to sort of change in what you're sort of eating. So I think crisps are often quite a good sort of mix it up a bit. So I'm thinking about a nice crisp sandwich. Oh yeah, now I'm getting hungry.
You're in your sandwich again, you see. You'll be eating that too quickly. If you had to choose between sweet and salty, what would you go with?
I think salty. That's definitely been a new realisation, because I used to always think it'd be sweet. But definitely prefer, I would go for the nuts. Although I tell you, both, if that's greedy, because I have peanut butter and jam on a sandwich, or I quite like honey roasted peanuts, so I'm getting the sweet and the savoury.
There's no wrong answer here. I think both is perfectly acceptable for the distances that you're running. Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about your book, Kayleigh? You've got a cookery book, haven't you?
I do. Yes.
Where can people find it? What's in it? Why should they buy it?
The Happy Diet, it grew from my Instagram page last year, and like what we were saying previously, the food that I was eating, it was making me happy, and I felt like what I was making looked amazing, so I just wanted to start to share it. And I was just started taking photos and putting up on my page, and would add a wee recipe on what I did, and it just sort of built traction. And I always love looking at other people's websites, and that was the sort of next progression was, well, maybe I start up a website, which should have been the sort of first thing to happen. But at the same time, I just started compiling this big list of recipes and a big backlog of beautiful photos of everything that I've made. So I just started playing around on some layouts, and before I knew it, I had pages and pages of a cookery book. The happydiet.co.uk is where you can find my book, and the book is called The Happy Diet, and it is full of everyday plant-based recipes, from breakfast to lunches and snacks, main courses and desserts. And like we were saying earlier, the idea is it's all accessible. It should be relatively easy to follow. There's no crazy ingredients lists. There might be some unique ingredients that you've never heard of before, like nutritional yeast perhaps, but you will see that repeating throughout the recipes. So the book was created very much in mind for trying to make this kind of food accessible for everybody, so then everyone can get the benefits and the joy that it's given me. So that's,
Which is the best reason of all to buy it, isn't it? Because honestly, you on your Instagram profile as well, I was thinking you really are happy. You're always happy. And it's lovely to see. And I think that's hopefully what running can bring people, and running on a plant-based diet even more so.
Exactly. And it is, like I say, it's the long-term benefits that a plant-based diet gives you as well. And, we can go a bit deep, but let's not do that. But it's, all the sort of horrible diseases and things that we're struck down with can be mitigated through eating a plant-based diet and getting all that goodness into you and help give yourself the best life possible.
Sounds like the best reasonable. Kayleigh, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I've got to wish you all the best of luck in your next Backyard Ultra Challenge. We really want you to smash it now. So,
thank you so much. Yeah, it's so lovely chatting to you, Laura.
Lovely to talk to you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to leave a review for the Vegan Fitness Runner podcast. Please subscribe if you don't want to miss an episode. And remember, you can find out more about all my guests and further information on all the topics covered over on the website veganfitnessrunner.com. Thanks again, and bye for now.